Hi, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, providing you with tips on language learning, culture, and human development. And I'm really excited to be with you today on this particular topic. And I think all of us, to a certain degree, over the last few months have been impacted emotionally, physically, economically by the pandemic, COVID-19. And I think its effects have just been global. And part of the presentation today, we like to focus on the actual impacts that it's had on education, school, teachers, your own individual lives. And in the midst of this struggle and pain, and there are many successes that I think people have experienced throughout. And I also have a very insightful guest that will be joining us today. Feel free, because this is a live broadcast, we want to hear about your experiences, not only with life, but also with school, with education and family, and specifically how COVID-19 has impacted you in so many different ways. Well, I'd like to, first of all, preface my comments. And again, feel free to comment throughout the broadcast. I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab. And I want to preface my comments by saying the following, that I really praise many, many teachers around the world who are working in low resource environments. In other words, no building, no running water, let alone the internet, that probably can't participate in this type of broadcast. And so I praise your efforts in wherever you are and what you're doing. So what I'd like to talk about is just briefly, and again, feel free to share your comments on the impact that COVID-19 has had on your individual life. That's why we do this as a live broadcast, and specifically related to school and your work and teaching as well. Well, first of all, what I'd like to share is a little bit about the impact that the pandemic has had on me personally in this particular area. You know, COVID-19 has had a wild and crazy impact, like an all-out rodeo. You just don't know what is going to happen next. If you look at this picture, this was in the initial stages at a local supermarket. People were hoarding toilet paper, and items like pasta and bread were flying off the shelves. This example, this was the pasta aisle. This was the bread aisle. And then, of course, that in many cases, wearing a mask just has become part of my everyday life. And one of the things that I found is, like finding hand soap just to wash your hands. Well, that was like looking for a glass of cold water in a barren desert, just almost impossible to do. And again, I'm interested in hearing your experiences and how COVID-19 has impacted your life. Also, there was a period of time, and this is slowly evolving and changing, where restaurants were closed to dine-in service. You could pick up food outside or through the drive-in window. But I think one of the greatest impacts has been on the emotional welfare of individuals, students, and family. And I know this has been a really difficult time, especially for people who are taking care of the elderly. We're taking care of elderly parents, and we have to be very vigilant on where they go and what they can do. And I feel greatly for those in elderly care centers who in some cases are sheltered and cannot go out, and even their families cannot visit out of concern for them and not spreading the virus. And that's really important, a really difficult situation. And I must say that I speak from a position of privilege. I'm not struggling from a hand-to-mouth existence every day, and I have the basics. I have an internet connection, but not everywhere in the world has these comforts. And I think that the reason why I wanted to do a live broadcast today is to provide you an opportunity to share your voices, to hear your experiences, because I know that I see the world through the glasses of my own experience, and I want to hear your voices as well. I just want to look at some of the comments that we might have here. I have some comments from Tunisia. Welcome from Tunisia. I have Marco says, good morning from the Dominican Republic. Great to hear from you, Antonio. Another comment is from Fethi. He says, COVID-19 improved my resilience as a teacher while coping with a sudden change in developing myself professionally. I think that's one of the things that our guest and I are going to talk about. Another one comment comes, I think that COVID just reveals human stupidity in some ways. I agree. Sometimes we do things that we wouldn't normally do. Another comment is wearing a mask is a must to go to a clinic due to 19. And we have some other comments. Greetings from Costa Rica. Great to hear from you. Well, right now, what I'd like to go is I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest for today. Our guest from today is Carol Siciliano Rodriguez, an EFL teacher from Costa Rica, from Central America. And I'd like to welcome you, Carol, to our episode today.
Okay, thank you, Randall. Thank you for this invitation. Hello, everybody. My name is Carol Siciliano Rodriguez. I'm an English teacher from Costa Rica. I have been teaching since 2012. And from Costa Rica, Costa Rica is a country that is located in Central America. And we are a small country. We are around 5 million people. And people said that we are very friendly. We have a lot of nature, a lot of beaches, and well, thank you very much.
Well, great. And what I'd like to do is, Carol, is if you could just talk just a little bit about how COVID-19 has impacted you, your life and so forth. I know that you shared a picture with me right here, a little bit about Costa Rica. Could you just take a minute and explain how COVID-19 has just impacted life in general? And then we'll get into the ideas of how it's impacted teaching and instruction.
Well, as you can see in those pictures, I think that it was almost at the beginning of this pandemic. You know, people got like crazy. The supermarkets were empty. People made long lines. They were waiting for food. They bought a lot of toilet paper, as you said before, pasta, bread, and those things. It was kind of, for me, like, oh my gosh, I can go to the supermarket. You know, some people got crazy, extremely crazy.
Yeah, and that I think a lot of people have experienced that. I'm just going to take a look at a couple of other comments. We have super connected learning about the great impact this global pandemic is causing. Greetings from Costa Rica. Thank you, Danny. I think this topic is of great relevance to all of us. Well, let's then talk a little bit about teacher and student reactions. I know that from my experience, when teachers found out, I work at the University of Utah here in the United States, and for some teachers, it was like, oh, I have no idea what to do. And so I'm interested in hearing what were some of the teacher and student reactions when you went online and just schools in general.
Okay, well, at the beginning, it was kind of difficult, you know, because we were not prepared for that. Teachers and students at the beginning, we were like, oh my gosh, how we can deal with this situation, right? And everything it happened very fast, right? I remember that I started teaching online lessons on May 18th. And it was like, okay, I have to hurry up. The student said, teacher, we are not prepared for this. We want lessons face to face. And what I did was like, guys, we can do it. So I worried a lot with the motivation with that area. And I said, no, so let's go. We can do it. You have a teacher that is going to be with you. And we did it. And we are still working on that, right?
So in the beginning, it was kind of like some fear as to
Fear, like shocked. Students were like shocked, like frightened. They were like, oh my gosh, especially because I work with adults, and some of them, they are not familiar with technology.
Okay.
On
Well,
this,
great. Again, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab here with Carol Siciliano Rodriguez, sharing our ideas and thoughts on the impact that COVID has had on language instruction and teaching. I have a comment here from Maisa. She says, or he says, that this pandemic has made me focus more on my professional online development. To be honest, I would never think of developing my skills of online teaching tools without the time given during the quarantine. I got to know lots of useful websites to do exams and quizzes, and I attended many webinars and got many online certificates and degrees. So it sounds like in this particular case, growth has
yes,
resulted in that.
I agree. I agree with Harry because I have grown as a professional a lot. I have learned how to use many websites. I have learned how to create new things, right? Because I'm here at home. So, and I took a virtual course, and that helped me a lot to improve my learning process and also my teaching process.
Okay, so how about Carol? You share with this picture a little bit about where you teach. Can you just share a little bit about where you teach and some of the tools that you've used to enhance your teaching? Again, we're interested in hearing more from different teachers around the world about what is helping you. So, Carol, could you just share just a little bit where you
Of
teach
course.
and what you've been doing?
Well, okay, I work for a company that we prepare people for working to different places where they need to know English, when they need to speak English like 85, 95%. And there we prepare themselves to the interviews and to the real life work, right?
Okay.
And well, there you could see in that picture is a real class that I had the last week. It was a virtual class with my students. I use a platform. Its name is Q10, and it has Zoom in that part. I divided the class in two parts. 2 hours are visual lessons, like when I interact with my students, when we work together, when I introduce a topic, when we have many activities on Zoom. And then the other 2 hours, my students, they work on the platform. There, I upload documents, I upload information. My students can see the information. I post information and they can write comments about it.
All right. And I think you mentioned you were using a course management system, but you've also integrated Zoom. And I think there are a number of people who have used similar platforms with Zoom. And you talked about sharing documents. What type of things can you share with Zoom? And the reason I think why we're mentioning Zoom is because it's everywhere. It's
Yes.
free and so forth. Can you share like what kinds of documents?
Okay, well, you can share videos, you can share PDF documents, Word documents, pictures, whatever you find on internet, you can share there. I think that is an easy tool that we have as teachers. It's not difficult to use. You can share your screen. Also, you can allow students to share their screens. If you have presentation or something like that, the students, they can share their screens too.
Well, let's take a look at a couple more comments. We have, let's see here. And again, we're not going to be able to answer all of the questions. Oh, we have a question. Daniela, super proud to see my teacher here. Oh, so
Thank
Daniela,
you.
please share a little bit about what has worked for you and your teacher in the classroom. Another comment comes a little bit about also it's a must to take one's temperature for students entering a building to attend class. Is that the case well, that wouldn't be the case for you, Carol, or for me, because we are teaching online, but interesting. Please share exactly where you are teaching that is making that requirement of taking teachers' temperatures. Another comment, and feel free, Carol, to join in with these comments. In schools in the United Arab Emirates, Again, feel free to share the country where you're working. We use different tools and programs such as Microsoft Teams, which allows teachers and students to interact well.
Okay, here in Costa Rica, the public schools, they use Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
Yes, they use that platform. And well, I have used that platform too, and it's easy to use. And you can do like things that I can do on Zoom, but on Microsoft Teams, you can post information. It's like a platform, not like Zoom that is just for video calls.
Right.
On there, you can post like meetings, like more information about what you need.
All right. Well, let's take a look at a couple of comments. There's a couple of comments that have come. Fethy has indicated and asked, how do you deal with assessment while teaching online?
That is a good question.
Do you have any thoughts on that by chance, Carol? I'm assuming it could be grammar or writing or listening, speaking, and so forth. Any thoughts on that?
Well, what I do, based on my experience, I'm trying to assign different activities, such as videos. I say, okay, guys, the topic, I don't know, the last week we were talking about present perfect progressive. And I say, okay, 5%, and you have to record, you have to make a video about the things that you have been doing during this quarantine. So, and they made a video, they sent me the video, and I watched it, and I took notes, and I sent them the feedback. Also, second, I like to assign projects. Okay, like projects, like, okay, guys, let's research some information. Also, I like to have interviews here just with my students, my student and I, right? And what else? Oral presentations. They work very well because there you can see how your students have been improving during these kind of lessons. I can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here I am. One of the things I was going to mention is that many teachers around the world do not have all of these different types of platforms where they might be working independently from home. And one of the things that you mentioned, Carol, is about doing some type of assessment of assessing their speaking in different ways. I use a service called Flipgrid. It's called Flipgrid. It's actually supported by Microsoft, where students can, it's just called flipgrid.com, where students can use their smartphones or computers to actually do recordings and send those to teachers, not relying upon, teachers and students, in every case, having a phone. In other words, they can pick up their phone, they can use it from their computer, they can use different devices, but the ability to share video files is a service I'm using with Flipgrid.
Okay.
Here's another comment. Well, let's take a look at this. Rita says, and I'm not going to show the entire comment because it'll take the whole screen, but let's look at this. Rita says, I'm from Malaysia. She says, the partial lockdown has not been lifted yet. I struggle to look after my elderly parents and a sister while working as a part-time tutor. That, and I praise you, Rita, for being willing to do that, because that can be extremely difficult, balancing personal life and work. She says, food is expensive. I have to budget the family spending. Teaching my students now is online, but I can't be effective sometimes when they don't pay attention. Well, let's talk about that, about trying to retain focus. So what do you do, Carol, when students are seen to be losing focus and motivation? How do you keep teachers and students motivated?
Okay, I think that is a fundamental part. Okay, we have to work a lot with the students' motivation. But the first person that has to be motivated is the teacher. Okay, if you don't like what you are doing, so your students are going to notice that. So the thing that I do is try to have like different lessons, not like the normal lesson, like boring lessons, because a boring teacher, the result, it will be a boring lesson. Okay, that's for sure. The thing that I do is like, for example, to start my lesson, I try to have different activities. I try to play games like, I don't know, Kahoot. Sometimes I play Stop with my students.
And doing
Also,
this online, right?
yes, yes. We start thinking about one letter, and I say, okay, let's start with A. And the person who finishes first has to say stop, and everybody stops. And they really love that activity. And also, we play Pictionary and different activities. So I think that we have to be very, very careful when we are teaching online, okay, because we are going to deal with many issues like internet connection, and maybe some students they don't have, but motivation is the main purpose here, right, guys. Here with the pandemic, as you said before, the feelings and everything, okay, people they are like dealing with a lot of situations. As a teacher, I try to motivate my students, and something that really works for me is that I try to make a video like once or twice a week, and I sound on the video with motivation words. Guys, you can do it. I'm here. Let's start speaking English. Don't be afraid. You can do it. We are not native. We can make mistakes, but try to fix your mistakes, because here is a problem. Well, when someone is learning English, the person sometimes says, no, I can't speak because I don't want to make mistakes. So, but that is part of. So I try to do that. What else? I have a WhatsApp group, and sometimes when I can't communicate with my students because they have problems with internet, I send them pictures. So I try to be in touch with them. I think that that is one of the best part of this. It could be one advantage of this pandemic, that we have like more contact with our students.
Yeah.
But something important, we need to be from the beginning, you need to establish your rules. Why? Because the students, they think that you're available 24 hours. And no, that is something that I did from the beginning, guys. This is my number. So, but I had a family, I have things to do. Please don't send me messages 1 p.m., right?
So
AM, sorry,
trying to
AM.
right. So trying to establish boundaries.
Exactly.
Well, great. Again, we're here with Carol Siciliano Rodriguez from Costa Rica. And you mentioned about motivation. And actually, as I was thinking this morning about motivation, I thought about two of my favorite books. This one is called, I'm going to just zoom out here, Carol, for a second. This one is called Daring Greatly. It's by an author called Brene Brown. Great topic on how to have great courage. And another book I like by the same author is called Rising Strong. And again, by Brene Brown, with the topic of, again, as Carol and I have been talking about motivation.
Randall, something that I did when this pandemic started, I started reading a book with my students, and my lessons became more interesting. Why? Because they started talking about the book, and we started like making summaries, and it was a great idea. So I can tell teachers, if you want to have more interactive lessons, try to read a book. And I recommend one that is called The Body by Stephen King. It's easy to read, so the vocabulary is not difficult. It's like for intermediate students. And something that it caught my attention is that the chapters are short. So you can read that book, I don't know, in less than a month.
Well, that's great. Carol, let's kind of look at some of the other comments. FA says, the question is, her English is very good. How long does she spend emerging in U.S. or another country where their English is the mother language? And I'm not sure if this question is to you. How long does she spend emerging in another country? Have you lived in another country?
No, I have never lived in another country. I learned here in Costa Rica, but I think that I made a bit effort
And I
Yes.
think that's a lot of what we're trying to say is, at least for students. I have students that have traveled thousands of miles to come to the United States.
No.
And well, I have students.
I'm here from Costa Rica too, but I always say to my students, guys, that is not a magic pill. No, you have to study.
Yeah. I guess what I'm saying too, Carol, is that for my students who want to come to the United States and study, and now they have to study online, is sometimes discouraging.
Uh-huh.
Here's another question. In the United Arab Emirates, we use Socrative for quizzes and exams. Socrative is an excellent service. Thank you for mentioning that, because you can create online quizzes and assessments. And at the university where I work, we use a system called Canvas. But Socrative is an excellent tool for people who are working independently, especially. Another comment here. Let's look at this. Working in Taiwan, each time a student or employee walks into the teaching building or campus, his or her temperature, we saw that as well. In terms of attending a teaching or administrative building, clocking in with one student's ID. So it sounds like there are a number of restrictions to
Here in
that.
Costa Rica too.
Gerald. Geraldo or Gerald, he says, yes, I remember that I learned a lot with all of the activities that the teacher did. Is that one of your students?
Yes.
Okay, so Gerald, thanks for chiming in and letting Carol know that her teaching matters. That's very validating. Vivian said, excellent topic. And yes, we'd like to hear from any of you who have experienced the challenges of staying motivated, of learning new techniques and so forth. Another comment, Vivian, for learning English, we have become self-taught. So in what way, let me ask you, thank you, Vivian, for sharing that. In what way, and these are some of the things that you've talked about so far, Carol, have you had to learn something that was uncomfortable?
Yes. Well, to be honest, I have to start learning how to use different technologies because I was in my comfort zone. Okay, I said, okay, I'm a teacher. I use a computer just for having my things. And I go to the class. I prepare PowerPoint presentations. I know I'm considered that I like to do different lessons, or I like to have different activities in the class.
Right.
But when this change started, you can imagine. And I had to take a course, an online course related to technology and related to this. And at the beginning, it was frustrated because I said, "Oh my gosh, I can't with this." But I learned a lot, and now I'm happy and proud of myself because I knew that I'm capable. Okay, that I'm capable, and that is for you, teachers. Some teachers they think, "No, I can't with this." So try. I have a lot of friends or a lot of teachers that say, Carol, can you help me with this? Of course. So, but don't worry, you can do it. Okay,
Well,
don't feel like, oh.
and I think, Carol, you are an example of someone who has combined a second language with technology and exude self-confidence. Because I know, to be honest, when I speak in front of people or when we started to do online classes, I was scared to death. And I think a lot of people are doing that. Well, let's look at a couple more comments and then we'll go on to the next part. Here is Nelson says, I'm a teacher as well, and I use all the lesson listening tips to build up listening. So thanks a lot, Randall. I know some people have been using different websites in combination with their teaching tools that they've used. Another question is, how it is easier to understand some native people and others not. Maybe accents. So I think that's a common comment where the reality is everyone has an accent. I have an accent. Carol has an accent. We all have accents, and that can be a challenge as well. Rita makes another comment. She says, learning and teaching can improve in such times Good comment.
Mm-hmm.
Where teachers learn to adapt themselves using technology. However, their sense of humor is something technology cannot replace. I really like that. And one of the things I think, maybe you think the same thing, Carol, is that there are certain things. My question is, what does the future hold for teaching and learning? There are some things that I used to do that I will no longer do. In other words, this experience has just changed the way I will teach in the future. How do you think about that?
Well, I really missed the contact face to face with my students. I really missed when we laughed in the class. I used to drink coffee with my students. Yes, I used to have different activities outside the room. I used to walk near our town, right? Because I worked in Cartago, it's a province here, and near the institute, there is a place where you can go and practice some exercises. So there, at that point, is the things that I miss a lot. I think that it's not the same, right, to be in front of the class. And also, I think that when we are in the class, we can see better our students, how they have been improving, right? Because with this technology, I think that one of the disadvantages is that we can't see if our students are not cheating, to say something, or if our students, for example, in some cases, they don't want to turn on the cameras. And I asked them a question. I'm not sure if they are reading. I'm not sure if they, I don't know, if they have some notes, if they can produce. I think that those are the things that I miss the most, the humor in the class.
And let me
My, sorry?
And let me jump in here for a minute. You, in preparing for this presentation, a lot of times we think of technology, technology, but you made a really important point as we were preparing about empathy and the role of empathy in just understanding students going through a difficult time in their lives and doing coursework. Do you have any other comment on that? Because I think that was a really important soft skill that you mentioned.
Well, yes, Randall, as I said before this interview, we must be empathetic with our students. Why? Because we don't know what are the things that they are facing. Some of the students, they have big problems. For example, a student of mine, once he told me that his father was fired and he couldn't connect at that moment. And he said, teacher, so sorry, I don't have money. I'm waiting for the money because the students, my population, they receive a payment from the government, from the local government, and they pay for the course. And with the other amount of money, they can pay for, I don't know, in this case, internet, food, transportation, whatever they need. And he told me that. And I said, okay, Danny, don't worry. We are going to do something. And I remember that the day later, I asked him, sorry, Danny, can you tell me how do you feel? Are you okay? No, yes, teacher, now I could fix the problem. I will join the next class. So we need to be empathetic. So why understand our students? Not everybody has the resources.
And I think that idea of human connection, which you're talking about, of not being able to meet with students, it's not the same. You can't reach out through Zoom and, help people. And when I think about empathy, just like you, empathy is that emotional hug of
Exactly.
embracing someone where you can use Socrative, you can use Zoom, you can use all technologies, but that human connection is something that you can't.
Sometimes, Randall, sometimes I said to my students the day before, guys, please, for next class, turn on the camera. I want to see you. It's not the same. When you don't have the cameras on, I feel if I were talking just to a computer.
Yeah, let's look at a couple more comments, and then we'll kind of wrap up our discussion for today. And again, we're not able to comment on every single comment. Feel free to share your additional comments, and Carol and I will certainly try to respond to those after the broadcast. Another question is, Misa says some serious things might happen while teachers are online. For example, I was teaching a class when the fire alarm started to ring in my building. I could do nothing but to ask students to wait till I checked out what was going on. My students were worried indeed. It said a lot about the care and love for their teacher. It was impressive. Thank you. Those are the type of comments I think are at the core of what we're trying to do. Another comment, Rita says, the listening test is not easy for students. I do play audio with questions for them. They need to focus, especially on the accents. We've had a couple of questions on accents. Any suggestions to help their listening skill? And what I'd like to do is save that idea. I'm going to be doing an episode just on listening skills that we'll talk about. Another comment was from Juan, adapting lessons now is harder than it was before. Now we have extra work in order to change the way we're teaching.
That
And,
is
the
extremely
question
true.
would, have you found, Carol, that your workload has increased in some ways?
Of course, a lot. Why? Because when I was in the classroom, I remember that I just clarified doubts in general, or I just checked something in general. Now, no, I have to check each student tasks. I have to plan my class. As I said before, I have to be more creative, right? Like, oh no, I can repeat this, because to be honest, it's tiring to be in front of a computer.
And I don't know about
Yes.
you, I get so nervous. Maybe people feel very natural, but yeah, there's all those combinations of ideas. What I'd like to finish with today is I'd like to hear of any examples of goodness or graciousness any of you, Carol as well, have experienced during this pandemic, how it's maybe affected your perception of the world and your own personal life. Can you think of anything, Carol, for example, just any example of graciousness and kindness that you've witnessed?
Well, I could say that here in Costa Rica, we see a lot of examples. For example, teachers from school, from public school, they have done an excellent job. Because some of the students that they are in school, they don't have all the sources, and the teachers, they prepare the material and then call the students, and the students go to school and they pick up the material. That is an excellent job. Okay, teachers. Also here in Costa Rica, the local government has helped a lot of people in need, because a lot of people here in Costa Rica have lost their jobs. Also, different campaigns are where people help others. Also, I can say that we are a blessing country, because, well, yesterday they were just 34 new cases of coronavirus. And in Costa Rica, we only have 10 deaths. Okay, thank God, because we have an excellent medical service. And so we have food, we have a house, we are healthy. And I think that we have a lot of reasons to be grateful. And Randall, I want to say something to the teachers, so you can do it. Okay, don't be afraid to these new changes. I know that is an extra work, but you have to be organized. Try to be organized. Also, take time for yourself. If you like to do something, right, so okay, you have to work, but also take time for you. If you like to do exercises, if you like to cook or share it with your family. We can't forget also the things that we like to do, because besides teachers, we are humans.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to thank you, Carol, for joining our episode today, sharing your expertise, sharing your love for your students, sharing a message of hope and empathy for teachers. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Randall, I have a quote. Can I read it?
Yeah, please.
Okay, it says, it might be stormy now, but rain doesn't last forever.
Yeah, so it might be stormy now, but the rain doesn't last forever. Is that right?
Yes, everything will be okay. And Randall, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm very thankful with God too for opening this door. And thank you, teachers. And well, get ready for this because this is a training. I see this like a training because that is going to be our future. So get ready. And it was a pleasure for me to be here.
Well, thank you very much, Carol, for joining us today.
Thank you. Goodbye. Take care. Bye.
Well, I'd like to finish this episode by sharing one particular thought. I know we've covered a lot of ground. I'm sure many of you still have questions about how to integrate technology into your teaching in this very difficult time. I think what Carol mentioned and what we tried to emphasize is having great empathy on students and teachers, because this is not easy for teachers as well, the stress of it and so forth. But what I'd like to do is finish up by sharing a thought that I know that these stressors often cause us to adapt. And I find that teachers and students are very chameleonic. In other words, they're able to adapt to new environments and new situations. And I think that's what the message of what we share today is, that difficult times, we wish you well. We hope that you'll be able to continue and join us for future episodes that will address other topics related to language teaching, culture, and human development. And feel free after this particular broadcast. I see other comments that are coming in. Feel free to share those comments. We'll do all we can to respond to them at the very end after the broadcast. But again, thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you well. Take care.